McDonald, VP in MetricStream's Customer Success Program. Today we have with us a very special guest, Joseph Okonek, GRC architect and administrator at Globe Life, a large US-based insurance company. At Globe Life, Joseph functions as a GRC ecosystem expert. He combines management, innovation, and technology skills to architect, implement, and enhance GRC systems and processes. Today, Joseph is going to be taking us on a great journey through MetricStream libraries to show us how they benefit GRC programs. Welcome, Joseph.
Thanks for having me today. My name is Joseph Okonek. I'm the GRC administrator and architect at Globe Life. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of leading with libraries in the MetricStream application. In front of you is the agenda. First item is vision, leadership, and collaboration. We'll go over what it takes to actually plan and see what you need for your libraries now, in the near future, and far down the line. We'll also talk about definitions and defining even more. Defining is critical to your application being set up correctly with the appropriate libraries. Then we'll talk a little bit about execution and change management, the way to make the libraries work for you in a timely fashion. And last, we'll look at the key learnings and key values to the libraries. So let's start. Leading with libraries is not as easy as ABC, but it is CDE. What is CDE? It starts with collaborate. Then we move forward to defining. And ultimately, after you collaborate and define, you're going to execute. What is the best way to go about collaborating? Well, I can tell you it helps to start with a vision of what you need now, a vision of what you're going to need in 3 years, and a vision of what you ultimately desire 5 to 7 years down the road. It may seem difficult, but a good vision is critical to lining up the libraries the way you need for the appropriate reporting and vision. Next, build a champion team. Start small. Don't try to start with the entire organization. Start with a small group of champions in a small, isolated environment that can champion the libraries, champion the definitions, and can help with defining the path going forward. Be flexible. Not everybody's definitions are going to be the same. Find common ground. There are no rigid libraries. And keep in mind, people are sensitive to what they think these libraries need. Have good and wholesome discussions about what your libraries should be. That will bring you value. Be inclusive. You would be surprised at all levels who can contribute to what these libraries should be. You can get it from anybody from the analyst all the way to the executive. If you include and you are flexible, you will find values in the libraries that you're going to build. Next, I know everybody hates to hear this, but have committees. Doing this once the flexibility and inclusivity is underway, doing this in a box can sometimes get very, very difficult. The committees need to be set to start regulating and monitoring the libraries that are being built to make sure that all people needs are going to be met. Again, short-term, mid-term, and hopefully long-term. So what are the values of foundational libraries? First and foremost, it establishes a common language across the frameworks. An asset means the same thing to IT that it does to ERM, that it does to your third-party vendor management. Establishing that common defined language is very important. Next, by establishing that common language, you build contextual intelligence. Your day-to-day work becomes easier. The understanding across the organization of your libraries becomes uniform and accepted. Well, when you have uniformity and standardization, you start to build efficiencies. You get agility in your time cycles. Your response times become faster. And finally, by having standardized data models, foundational libraries, you build the basics for your analytics. Not to mention, you also build the basics for things much further down the line: robotic process automation and artificial intelligence. Those two things require solid data in order to work appropriately and accurately. So how do I do this? What can I use? MetricStream provides tools like this, the building out of libraries over time. How do I roadmap? Through your champion team, through your committees, define a roadmap. As you can see from this roadmap, operational risk is the first thing that is important to this group. Also, internal audit management, then SOX compliant. But look below. The most important thing here is what libraries are required by these various rollouts. For instance, operational risk requires assets, asset classes, controls, financial accounts, functions, processes, product, and risk. And it has optional components like objectives, organizational profiles. Those are optional. If you look across this, you can see the required elements. The more R's or required elements there are inside of the rollout, the more you have to pay attention to those libraries first, because those libraries are the foundations of not just one, but all. So take, for instance, asset classes. You would want to have everybody that, or the people that are involved in operational risk, internal audit management, SOX compliance, IT risk, and business continuity involved in discussing the definition of the business continuity module. This is an excellent strategy tool for how to discuss in your committees and amongst your champions which libraries to build first. Next, define your hierarchies. Build that standardization out. Federate it. Why? Of course, better reporting. Because it becomes organizational. It's organized. It's thematic. It's focused on relevant data. Of course, if you take the strategy slide from before, you will be using the most relevant data first. Also, as you build those out, you have a lower resource demand. Keep this in mind. It is very, very important to remember there is no one right answer. The model is going to be based on your organization's specific needs. It takes time to figure those needs out and define the libraries the way you need to define them. Look at this map. This is the data model, or the data lake, as we might like to call it. Look at everything that can relate. Areas of compliance, to risks, to controls, to questions. This can be very, very, very overwhelming. It's a large task to take on. It's a data lake. All data lakes are a large task. Remember, we need to make sure that we align what we need with our current needs, our near future, and our long distance planning for analytics and operational reporting. How would one go about doing that? I would suggest you break it down into minimum taxonomy. Let's call these kiddie pools instead of lakes. Take a child, dump them in a lake. They're not going to do well. Put them in a kiddie pool, teach them how to swim. That's what this is with data. That's what this is with data. These are kiddie pools of data. If you look at compliance, Compliance needs six required libraries. Risk governance only needs 4. So business continuity may need 4 business units, risk, controls, processes. But as you start to tie these all out, you start to get a complete picture of your entire library and risk data. It's very important that you start with kiddie pools. Move from kiddie pools to swimming pools to ponds, and ultimately ponds to lakes. Have a rollout plan as well. Much matched to the data plan is a rollout plan. Notice in this plan there are 3 different lines, 3 different arrows. One is GRC readiness. This is when is the business actually going to be ready to define their libraries? When are they going to be ready as a business to start putting things into a system? The blue is the module implementation and build. Build it, govern it, test it. And finally, the last is the rollout. Who are we going to roll out first? I would suggest ultimately rolling out who gets the most value out of the product first. That ultimately comes from operational gains before strategic gains. Take your operational gains, make this product work for you and give you instant value, then move into your strategic gains, ones that give you better analytics and also give you more of a proactive value. In the GRC framework and taxonomy, make sure that you follow your overall guiding architectural principles. You may need to get with your data architecture team on this. Make sure it's component-based. Make sure that it's abstracted from the technology and supported by processes and data models. Ultimately, on the ontology, make sure you have a formal naming process. The properties are the same. The relationships are the same. The definitions are the same for the entire organization. Make sure that there are any rules that may exist between entities in place, that they have contextual intelligence. Data without contextual intelligence is just data. It adds no value. Make sure that you can map these things to various data sources. So basically, you want to align with your information architecture principles. You want it all derived from the ontology and taxonomy that was defined before. Include the mapping to content sources. Build them out over time. Remember, kiddie pools to swimming pools to ponds to lakes. Have upgrades and performance constraints. Make sure that you don't have any constraints in rolling things out, as in you may need an upgrade, there's an upgrade due. So watch your timing on that. And ultimately, remember, this is the foundation to analytics, workflow behavior, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence. It all sets the foundation. So how do you go about with making this change? You have to execute and manage. Key to execution and management is education. You have to educate your users. You have to educate your business owners. You have to educate your champion team that you've built on the value of the libraries. How do we do that? Your champion team needs to become your evangelist. They need to build prototypes. You need to show a visual of how this data could impact you. What value does it bring to not just the organization that's trying to use it, but the organization as a whole? Where do you see this? You see this in the Data Explorer, which we have coined the Wheel of Wonder, simply because it is a visual representation of all the interrelated data inside the application. It has a wow factor, per se. So we call it the Wheel of Wonder. How do we do it? How can you do it? You can do it by configuring your libraries manually and simply entering the data, or using spreadsheets to upload. Both are effective manners. How do you maintain? Maintain requires cycles by which you review your assets, or you set up processes that allow you to enter the assets in real time. In a perfect world, you would have an integration to the important library populations. CMDB is a perfect example. That would be a great integration to have, as your asset library could automatically update based on what comes through the CMDB. What are the guiding principles to this whole library? First, collaborate. We'll go through this again. Look at establishing work group that accepts the new and retires the old common library elements and ensures that they meet the standard taxonomy requirements. You need a group. You need to collaborate. New capabilities will come in. That group needs to help define, educate, and evangelize the appropriate way to reflect those new capabilities. Manage the common information. You need processes that allow for streamlined management, whether that be integrations into other systems or manual processes of entering in assets when they come in. All these are defined and manageable inside of the metric stream application. Get the basics right. Make sure your security around your libraries are assigned appropriately, that they're assigned to the appropriate business owners, and that the reporting that you get is going to meet management's needs. This is all done through the defining of the libraries and their taxonomy. Leading right into use a common language. Determine what risk management enterprise-wide taxonomy for risk identification, analysis, and treatment need to be common and what can be unique. What that says is make sure that you understand how you set up your assets and how you not your assets, your libraries. How you set up your libraries are defined not just for one group, but for the entire group. Again, back to the importance of the taxonomy and the definitions. How do I execute? Start simple and develop over time. Defining and implementing standardized and federated taxonomies is a daunting task. But if you start small with a small group of champions, a small group of people, a small group of early adopters, let's say, you will easily be able to get this going off the ground. The benefit itself will grow its roots from the ground up. And finally, build expertise and excellence. Make sure that the excellence and the expertise that you have on staff or in your consulting group meets the demands and needs of your business that can help you not just implement what you do now, but grow you into the future. This is a slide of the Wheel of Wonder, as we like to call it. See how many different things are available? You have risk tied to operational risk. How many processes, how many organizations are tied to operational risk? And all these can be drilled further down to see other library objects that are related to them. Processes may be related to assets, that may be related to business continuity plans. This is the integrated data that we strive and everybody should strive to reach. So on the organizational change, much like the libraries, think big, start small, but be ready to scale fast. Build that core team of change agents, identify them early and use them. Temper the change. Everybody can get very excited about this. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Pick your sprints. Find your isolated business cases. Remember to look long. And again, find the early adopters. These are the people that are going to help you implement the product, accept the product, and understand the value of the product. Now, when it comes to value, show operational gains first. How's it making my operations better? Anytime you can do that, you're going to get support for what you're doing. Then show your strategic gains. Start bringing out the analytics. Start bringing out the reports that help make decisions, that help people understand where the enterprise sits. And finally, the long-term goal, integrated enterprise reporting. This is really, really a great goal to have. And if you build out over time, it is very achievable. And above all, don't let perfection be the enemy of good enough. It's hard in our world to not be perfect, but you have to be flexible and understand that this won't be perfect the first time, but an 80, a 90% hit is a great hit from where you might be right now. If you keep trying to strive to perfection, you will never get off the ground. Finally, in your GRC program, have a governance model. Have committees, a GRC committee, a subcommittee, and put the decision holders on it. Help keep everybody in the loop. Back to inclusivity. Help make sure that the product's going the way that the people need it to go. What are the challenges? People. Collaboration is a challenge. Everybody is very busy with their day-to-day jobs. Getting collaboration on this can be a task. Processes. Define them. Make sure that you have good processes for implementing new libraries, for understanding new libraries and moving forward. And ultimately systems. What is the execution? How are we going to execute? And how do we get it done? Also, don't forget the sharing of best practices, the MSIGs for Metric Stream, the Metric Stream community, a GRC journey, or the conferences. They all can be guiding lights to helping you build your libraries. Ultimately, what could be the benefits of the libraries applied to COVID responses? Yes, we're at COVID responses. Integrated data can allow for both operational and strategic decision making, specifically around BCP and BIA analysis for disaster recovery or operational risk management. If you have your processes tied to your assets or your assets tied to your processes, I can see which one of those are most critical, which ones have the least tolerance for downtime. This helps in making contingency plans. Issues and exceptions management. As we move into the new world of remote users, there are exceptions to security policies that become issues that have to be documented, that may be tied to policies or processes or other things that will help you make that decision. Policy management and monitoring. As we move into this new world, policy management and monitoring could become a crucial part of your organizational. Although policies are not defined as a metric stream library object, they are a library that will need to be maintained in order to make sure that you are in compliance and your risk and your security are attested to and monitored. Finally, compliance change management. Compliance change management is important because you're going to get new regulations from states. When you get those new regulations from states, you're going to want to know what areas of compliance they affect. And through those areas of compliance, you may want to know which processes and which policies are impacted by this. These are all valuable things that are given to you when you set up the appropriate libraries to allow you to use the system and benefit as much as you can. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you having me.
Joseph, thank you for such an inspiring talk. I know we all appreciate more how GRC libraries can really help us in building high-value, real-time, data-driven GRC programs. Thank you again.